Hello and welcome everyone, it's Capcan and today we're gonna preview the Nokhud Offensive, new dungeon in Dragonflight, which is in beta status right now. It's a preview of Nokhud Offensive, a new dungeon in Dragonflight, which is located in the Ohnaran Plains. Yeah. Has 4 bosses. I guess that's a mistake here. It has to be Nokhud Offensive. Has 4 bosses in a semi-linear path, with the first 3 bosses being accessible in any order. Quite interesting. This dungeon is special as it features a dragon riding feature for the first 3 bosses. You have access to a smaller version of the Ohnara Plains, and your group must dragon ride to reach the first 3 boss areas. To enable these bosses, you need to interact with 3 different items in their general area to bring them down. The area where the final boss Balakar Khan is located is inaccessible with dragon riding. I don't know if people will like this part, because people don't really like anything when it comes to dungeons where if it doesn't really connect it to killing monsters by themselves. So if there are any other system that is slapped on top of the dungeon, it will probably be at least some kind controversial. Maybe it's very easy to get to these bosses and you don't really have to be good at dragon riding. I don't know. But well, it's a cool idea, cool concept. However, it will be implemented or it will be done, I don't really know. In this dungeon, the main storyline of the Ohnara Plains comes to a close, where we need to defeat the Centaur Nokhud clan, who has allied themselves with the Primalists and captured Ohnara, the ancient eagle spirit that names the zone. So, previous dungeon that I saw, Breckenhide Hollow, was about the gnolls, and this one is against centaurs. It looks pretty cool. We'll look for the... So it's almost... it's a very similar aesthetic of the skybox. It's all gray, it's all pretty green. I like the aesthetics of it. It reminds me a little bit of a dungeon... Oh shit, I forget all the names of the dungeons. The one with the Cthulhu themed in BFA, where you had an open part of the dungeon, and it was similar in this grayness of skies and air and stuff like that. Yeah, so more of these wind points, probably for dragon riding. Yep, it is. There are some points on the ground, and by the vastness of it, it kind of reminds me of Eye of Ashara, because Eye of Ashara is very big open area where you can go wherever you want, and it is a bit confusing when you're entering the zone first time, but it's a pretty cool visual that you don't really have too much from the dungeons nowadays, because there aren't so many dungeons that are open, that have open fields with some, at least, immersion of freedom and willingness to go anywhere. So yeah, it looks pretty cool. There are not much of the mobs themselves. Man, it even looks a little bit similar. Yeah, it reminds me of some places in WoW already, but it definitely feels quite cool. I guess there are 25 images of the dungeon itself, so some statues here and there. Raging Tempest, probably a boss, which is pretty big. Yes, yeah, I guess is that some kind of a overview of the dungeon? But no, probably it's a little bit too small for that. Yeah, and there we have our centaurs, some spirits. 25 out of 24. Yeah, so, and there is probably, if that's a Khan, which means that the last boss is Balakar Khan. Yep, and that's the only boss that that is named Khan, which we can see here, and that's the eagle spirit that he's captured. So for the last boss, maybe not the most epic scene, still feels pretty cool, it looks pretty cool. Skybox is gorgeous in my opinion. Now let's go for the skills of the bosses for a bit, then we'll look at the trinkets. Yeah, so Granith. Granith casts his shadow over the plains of Onara, appearing as an omen of death and destruction. As battles between centaur clans rage across the plains, he knows it is time to destroy his ancient enemies once and for all. Soon he will land on the battlefield. Clan Shikar Ballisti will be ready. Okay, so let's look for the overview. Granith assaults players with earthen powers, which sounds pretty logic. Upon reaching 100 enemy, he attempts to crush his foes with a massive ongoing eruption. Granith causes the earth beneath him to erupt, inflicting 35 nature, so some small amount of nature damage to all players every 30 seconds. Each time this occurs, the damage of subsequent shockwaves is increased. So it starts probably pretty small, then it ramps up, and probably the damage becomes more and more. It takes more and more damage to all players until it is interrupted. Oh yeah, so you need to interrupt it. Tectonic Stomp inflicts high nature damage to nearby players and knocks them away. So nearby players to all players within 33 yards. Yeah, that's a cock in the ass for the melee players probably. Granite stomps the ground, inflicting 50 nature and some. I guess these numbers, they aren't really reflective of the real numbers in the game, because 50 and 60 and 35 damage is way too little for it to be the case, because in other dungeons there was strikes with 5, 10, 50,000 damage. Therefore numbers here are not really representative of anything inside the game. So inflicting some damage to all players within 23 yards. Yes, and 4 seconds cast, which means that you really have time to react to this stuff. For damage dealers, Tectonic Stomp inflicts high nature damage to nearby players and knocks them away. Nokhud Saboteurs attempt to dismantle. The Nokhud Saboteur disables a Dragon Killer lance, preventing it from being able to be fired or reloaded. Dragon Killer lances to prevent them from firing. Shikar Lancers can be instructed to fire the Dragon Killer lance. Fire at Granith to stun him for 5 seconds and inflict 5% of his maximum health as physical damage. Challenge? Maybe that's some kind of a additional stuff. I don't really know what means challenge. What does it mean here? But there are some ads which you can interact with your allied ads and enemy ads. And so that's only for challenge mode probably. And here, or maybe some achievement, I don't know. Damage dealers. Tectonic Stomp inflicts high nature damage to nearby enemies and knocks them away, so you probably want to evade it. Shikar Lancers can be instructed to fire the Dragon Killer Lance. Yeah, so you can call your allies to fire the lance. Don't really know how it will be interacted inside the game, but we have seen pretty large amount of similar things in raids and dungeons before. For healers, Eruptions inflicts more and more damage to all players until it is interrupted, inflicts unavoidable damage on all players. Shards of Stone. Granite expels a number of shards and inflicts 15, so lesser amount of damage to all enemies within 60 yards, which means that everybody will be affected with this ability. Shikar Lancers can be instructed to fire the Dragon Killer Lance. So yeah, probably anyone can instruct the Lancers to attack. Abilities, so from abilities only Eruptions, Shards of Stone and Tectonic Stomp. We've read everything, every one of them. Ignores players to complete its task. Periodically aids Granite by running to a Dragon Killer Lance to dismantle it. Yeah, so these guys will... So that's all skills of this boss. It doesn't seem any really complicated at all. It seems like a pretty simple boss. When it comes to the loot, some armor slots, polearm, trinket. Equip, taking damage has a chance to activate the scale, shielding you for So agility or strength, which means for melee DPS. Shielding you from 8,000 damage and increasing your armor by 1,000 while the shield holds. Oh no, that's for tanks. Agility is there because there are monks, which probably can use this as well. The shield explodes when broken, dealing 7,000 physical damage split between all nearby enemies. Yeah, looks like more of a tank item, definitely. So probably no more trinkets for the first boss. Yeah, so Granny. So pretty straightforward boss at its core. The Raging Tempest. We've probably saw some of the screenshots of this Raging Tempest here. Yeah, probably that it is. There it is. Violent Storm, winds ravage the Onara plains. Balakar Stormcasters have coalesced the Tempest's fury into an avatar of the storm. The Raging Tempest continues to gather power not just to devastate the battlefield, but the entire Dragon Isles. Unchecked primalist chaos will reign on the plains. It'll probably start from the abilities themselves. Uncontrollable energy. The Raging Tempest creates... I guess that's... There it is. There's the... Okay. So, the Raging Tempest creates lightning orbs from its own uncontrollable energy. Coming into contact with a lightning orb inflicts 4,000... not too big of a damage, and grants 5% increased damage and healing for 15 seconds. This effect stacks. And grants 5% increased damage and healing for 15 seconds. Okay. Electrical Storm. The Raging Tempest unleashes a massive electrical storm, inflicting 3,000 damage every 0.5 seconds to all players for 15 seconds. Yeah, that hits hard. Okay, for 15 seconds, probably you'll try to either interrupt it or... Oh, I guess you probably can't interrupt it. Maybe you can't interrupt it because it says here that it's important for healers, which may indicate that healers will have to heal through that intense damage phase. Lightning Strike. A massive lightning strike that inflicts 23 nature damage to all players within 15 yards. So again, not the right numbers. Definitely inflicts 13,000 nature damage to all players within 15 yards. And that's just one heavy hit. Squall. Lightning Strike creates a squall for 1 minute, which inflicts some natural damage every 1 second and reduces movement speed by 30 for players within. Okay, Energy Surge. The Raging Tempest experiences as an energy surge, increasing melee attack speed by... Oh, so the boss gets enraged by 100% for 10 seconds and causes melee attacks to inflict an additional nature damage, which means that tank should use his defensives in this part. Windburst. The Raging Tempest inflicts 100% of normal weapon damage as nature damage to its current target if the player is not in melee range, which means that you have to stay close to the boss itself. The Raging Tempest inflicts some nature damage every 1 second to players standing beneath it. Oh, so you have to be as further away as you can, I guess. Okay, overview. 1 second. The Raging Tempest brings the uncontrollable energy that manifests itself in the form of several lightning orbs that grant surge of power. Upon reaching 100 energy, the Raging Tempest channels a powerful electrical storm to decimate its foes. Probably inflicts and increases damage and healing done by 5%. It's either wrong here and it increases damage taken, but probably if healing is there as well, then you're getting some damage done to you, and then your damage increased and healing increased, and you want to get these orbs instead of avoiding them. I don't know, depends on the numbers of the damage itself. But okay. Damage dealers. The Raging Tempest periodically fires off lightning orbs, which grants players a surge of power. Lightning Strike inflicts heavy damage to nearby players and destroys nearby lightning orbs. Which means so that, yeah, you probably want to catch them all, and you want to dodge this ability if you can. The Raging Tempest periodically fires off lightning orbs, which grant players surge of power. Again, inflicts heavy damage to nearby players, and Electrical Storm inflicts heavy damage to all players. Oh, and destroys nearby orbs. So that's the one that inflicts periodical damage, and probably that's some kind of a phase of the boss when you want to only heal your allies as much as you can. Tank the Raging Tempest periodically fires off lightning orbs. Again, Lightning Stripe inflicts heavy damage. The rate and Energy Surge. Yeah, so you want to live through this part when he attacks you very, very hard. Other things are for challenges only, and now what do we have with our loot? Trinket, ability only. Your attacks have a chance to cause the winds to surround you, raising your ability by 41 per stack, stacking to 10 times over 15 seconds before then falling off. Well, and it has cooldown, so it's a proccable cooldown, which gives you main stat, only for ability users. There's some stuff for casters. One-handed sword. Equip your attacks have a chance to strike out again, doing some physical damage, I guess, and it has cooldown as well. Sometimes it does strike twice. All right. So they just straight up named it strike twice. Thunderous downburst ring. Interesting. Okay. Now Tira and Maruk. Octel necromancers are resurrecting legendary centaur. The spirits of the first matriarch Tira and the centaur's greatest warrior Maruk have risen from their graves. These ancestors now kill on command. Once their fury has abated, perhaps they can find rest again and eternal peace. Okay, overview. I'm not gonna read abilities because most of them are already here, but yeah, there is some mythic difficulty points that I need to probably read afterwards. So overview. As the progenitors of the Maruk, centaurs Tira and Maruk crushes their enemies with ancient tactics. At 100 energy, Tira begins to cast, dual boss begins to cast a Gale Arrow. Blast target players with a destructive force of wind, inflicting some natural damage. 4 tornadoes drift from the point of impact, inflicting drift from the point of impact and knocking back any player they come into contact with. So many projectiles, I guess, which you have to dodge, otherwise it will knock you back and deal damage twice. While Maruk protects her with Frightful Roar. Maruk lets out a terrifying roar, inflicting shadow damage to all players within 15 yards and fearing them. Oh, so fear. And I saw in the warrior talent tree roar against fears, which may be quite handy in this dungeon. Maruk attacks players with Earth Splitter. Slams the ground with all his might, causing the earth to split towards target players every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. The ground erupts after 2 seconds, inflicting physical damage to all players within 4 yards of each impact. Well, these bosses they sound already much more complicated than Granite. Terra repels players from Maruk using Guardian Winds. Tira channels forceful winds that push players away from Maruk for 6 seconds, which will be a pain in the ass for melee players again. Depends on the range of this wind, but probably it will be mostly if the ability is centered around the Maruk itself, probably it will be pain in the ass only for melee. Maruk often casts Brutalize on his current target, so it's big enough physical damage on the tank. Earth Splitter inflicts heavy damage to any player in the area on impact, which means that you have to dodge everything quite fast. Maruk's Frightful Roar will cause nearby players to flee, which means that you either need to get out of the nearby players. Well, you just need to leap out of the encounter. Or maybe there will be some line of sight stuff. Man, it reminds me a lot of the Setrak holes, if there was holes, with twin bosses, and a little bit of the other BFA dungeons. with the fear. Okay, Gale Arrow creates damaging tornadoes that travel through the battlefield. Earth Splitter inflicts heavy damage to any player in the area on impact. And I guess that you want to dodge this as much as possible, because they're gonna fork if you're hit by it. I come into and knocking back any players. Am I right? At 500 energy, that 4 tornadoes drift from the point of impact, inflicting 25 distracting force of wind. Maybe it's not, because not the point of impact may occur even if player wouldn't get hit by the arrow itself. Healers. Maruk often casts Brutalize on his current target, which means that there will be heavy emphasis to healing your tank. Frightful Roar will cause players to flee. And Tira will target random players with her quick shot. Random player will get some damage as well, which means that you have to change your targets quite often. Now, trinkets. Intellect. At last, some intellect trinkets. Your damaging spells have a chance to fire a Soulseeker arrow towards your target, inflicting some damage, shadow damage over 20 seconds to the first enemy hit. Chance to fire a soul towards your target. If the target dies while affected, your next damaging spells will fire an arrow. What arrow? The same arrow? Soulseeker arrow again? That's quite cool for casters. It's definitely not a healing trinket, not a healer trinket. So we have bow here. Another trinket, intellect, unleash the voice of Onhara, wrapping the target in a shield of winds, shielding them for 3000. That's a healer trinket. When the shield ends, this effect repeats on up to 4 additional nearby allies, prioritizing the ally with the least amount health. Pretty cool. Active staff with 1.3 seconds cooldown. Chest and third trinket. So that's for strength users. Your attacks have a chance to call a trampling centaur to charge forward, dealing 3000 damage, split between all enemies in a line. The centaur leaves behind a ghostly trail for 10 seconds, increasing movement speed for you and your party members within by 30%. Cool, because it grants you more mobility. More mobility is always useful. And mobility for the party members is even more useful than that. Now, Balakar Khan. Balakar Khan is the ruthless leader of clan Nokhud. His Stormcasters have captured the Great Eagle Spirit, and he wants to seize the Wind Mother's power. Hatred unites his clan against all outsiders. As the relentless offensive continues, someone must stand up to this tyrant. Okay, let's go with overview. The mighty Balakar Khan assaults players with deadly martial arts like Iron Spear. Balakar throws his spear at a marked player, inflicting damage to players within 6.5 yards of the impact location and knocking them back, which means that you will have to spread, or at least your one player will have to go away from the rest. Upheaval. Balakar flings earth towards a player's location, knocking back players and inflicting 40 physical damage. So there are very many knockbacks in this dungeon. Upon reaching 60% health, Balakar Khan calls on his clan's Stormcasters to aid him while he finishes the ritual, claiming the spirit's power for himself. Once all the Stormcasters are defeated, Balakar rejoins the fight, now infused with the power of the storm. So he succeeds the ritual itself. There will be a phase with the ads. And Balakar Khan's Iron Stampede charges toward his spear, inflicting probably heavy physical damage to players caught in his path and knocking them away again. Trembles. So he throws down the spear, and then which already knocks player back. And then he stampedes towards that spear. Interesting. Savage Strike. Balakar inflicts damage to his current target, inflicts heavy damage to targets afflicted by ranging strike. Balakar inflicts some damage to his current target and causes them to bleed for some physical damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. Increases damage taken from Savage Strike by 500%. Yeah, there are quite more going on here than on the Granith, you know. Damage dealers. So you need to dodge the Stampede, you need to dodge the Spear. Balakar Khan will continue to channel storm winds. The violent winds radiating from Balakar Khan push all players away again during the intermission until his Nokhud Stormcasters are defeated. Oh, so that's the way for you not to come close to him, probably. Healers, Iron Stampede, again, you're dodging two things. Thunder Strike, Balakar inflicts 9 damage to his current target. Inflicts heavy damage to targets inflicted by Conductive Strike. Oh shit, so he has many skills. So Iron Spear, Iron Stampede, we understood that. Upheaval, that's another AoE stuff that knocks back players. 23,000 damage, holy shit. That's a lot. Rending Strike inflicts 26,000 damage to his current target and causes them to bleed. And Savage Strikes will inflict more damage on the strike. So there will be hitting. It will hit hard your tanks. That's the main thing that you can get out of this point. Intermission, Storm Winds. So they will cast Storm Bolts. Flings a Storm Bolt that inflicts 5,000 damage. Well, at least that's moderate. And then the Violent Winds radiating from Balakar Khan push all players away and inflict damage every 0.5 seconds. Maybe it will be 300 yards range. Oh, so that's probably... You need to DPS these Nokhud Stormcasters fast in order to... get rid of the Storm Winds. Storm Winds, yeah. Sounds familiar. Lightning, 300-yard range. Lightning strikes. Inflict natural damage to players within 3.5 yards of the impact locations. 20,000 nature damage within... I guess there's just another thing for you to dodge. Stage 2, the Storm Unleashed. Static Spear. Balakar throws his spear at a marked player, inflicting damage. And then Iron Stampede to it. So he inflicted his Iron Spear with static, crackling upheaval, flings earth towards a player, so that's the same as upheaval, but again imbued with the power of lightning. As the explosion occurs, all players inflict damage to players and leave behind a crackling cloud. Crackling cloud that inflicts some damage to players who stand within it. So more areas where you can't stand, where you can't fight and you need to dodge. Lightning strikes inflicts damage on the impact locations. More, and if we're comparing the damages, 26,000, 20,000. And an additional nature damage, but still maybe because that's elemental damage and you can't reduce it with armor, you'll probably get more damage even though the number itself is a little bit less. Increases damage taken from the thunder strikes by 500%. Yeah, so he just converts in second stage. He just converts himself from the physical damage to mostly lightning damage. I guess at least third and fourth bosses look quite complicated, at least on the spectrum, if you compare it to some other bosses. First one is probably, if only there are not so much damage from the abilities itself, it looks pretty easy, and the Raging Tempest looks moderate. So thank you for sticking with me on this video. That was a fast preview of the dungeon. I don't really have any gameplay or other stuff to look, which means that we will see maybe a little bit closer to the release of the Dragonflight on this dungeon in live version. We will manage to see gameplay, see skills, see how it goes. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will join me in later videos. Bye.